What is going on, guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS4 tutorial. So in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you guys how to set up the PS4 SDK mainly for 1.76 PS4s so that you can build your own ELF and bin payloads to execute on your 1.76 PS4. Now this is not just for people who are wanting to develop stuff for the PS4. It's also because mainly a lot of developers will release normally, if they can, they'll release a payload already made, and then you can just execute it on your PS4, like all the payloads that are out so far. But there are some cases where the developers can't just release a payload for you to execute, because whatever it is the payload does, it requires something specific to your console. So it might require like a game ID, for instance. And one of the reasons I'm doing this video is I'm planning to do another video on how to decrypt your games. And in order to do that, you need to build the payload, but put in your ID for the game that you're wanting to dump. So that's why they can't just give you a pre-compiled payload. You have to put in your own game ID and then build the payload yourself. So there are quite a few cases where this happens, and you do need to build the payloads yourself. So it's a good idea to just have the SDK set up in a virtual machine ready for when one of these developers releases something that you want to use, you'll be able to build it without being stuck and not being able to use it. So that's basically why we're going to be covering this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Ubuntu in a virtual machine, and this is important because the SDK runs in Linux, at least this version that's released as far as I know. It only works in Linux, so you're going to need to have Linux set up in a virtual machine in order to use it. And for this we're going to use VirtualBox because it works on all different platforms, all different versions of Windows you can use VirtualBox on. So I'll link it in the description along with the download to Ubuntu latest version, and I'll also of course link in the description the PS4 SDK that you need as well. So you need all three of those things. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up VirtualBox, and we're going to create a new virtual machine. I'm just going to call this Ubuntu 2, so I already have one set up. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure the type is Linux and the version is Ubuntu 64-bit, and then click Next. Next we have to apply a certain amount of memory. So again, this is personal preference. A gigabyte will probably work, or 2 gigabytes. I'm going to put on 4 gigs just because I want it to be a bit faster. And then we're going to create a virtual hard disk. Create virtual hard disk image, dynamically allocated, and I'm going to give this probably about 15. You can probably give it about 15 to 20 gigs of storage is all it really needs. And then once it's done, you can right click and go to settings, and we can modify this a little bit more. So in the advanced, I'm going to put on bi-directional clipboard sharing and drag and drop, so that you can drag and drop files from your physical machine to the virtual machine and vice versa, and the same with copy and pasting text as well. It doesn't always work though, so I mean the copy and paste clipboard seems to work, but the drag and drop doesn't always work. So next we're going to go into system, and I'm going to also give it 2 processing cores to work with to make it a bit faster. Again, personal preference, you don't have to do that. Then we're going to go into storage, and this is the important thing you do need to do, is you need to click on empty and add from this little disk icon, you need to add the Ubuntu ISO. So for me it's in the drop down list. If it's not in the drop down list for you, you just click on choose virtual optical disk file, and then you just locate Ubuntu. So just locate your copy of Ubuntu where you downloaded it to, and then click open, and it'll add it in there. Okay, so from there I think that's pretty much all we need to do. So we click OK and we click start to launch our virtual machine. Now you do need virtualization enabled in your computer's BIOS, otherwise you will get an error message when you try and boot this up. And try and get it into full screen. So now you just wait for Ubuntu to initialize, and you need to install it. I highly recommend installing it. Ubuntu does have an option to try Ubuntu where it will just run, it will just run like a live version. You don't want to do that because it will get everything on it will get wiped out the next time you boot it up. So you want to install it fully. Okay, so here we go. So you want to make sure you select install Ubuntu, not try Ubuntu. And then we're going to download updates while installing because that is a good idea. So we get everything, so we make sure it's all up to date. And then we just click install now, continue. And we'll just go for time zone, keyboard layout, you know, your usual stuff. Set up an account, give it a password, and log in automatically, and continue. And there we go. So we're just going to have, this takes a while, so you're just going to have to wait until this installs. Alright, so once it's installed, you just go ahead and restart. Press enter. And it should reboot. So once we get back in here, we're going to install the guest editions as well. This is like a kind of optional step, but I do recommend doing it because it will make the system run a little bit better, and it will also allow the copy and paste from physical machine to virtual machine and virtual machine to physical machine work. Otherwise it doesn't work right now. So what you need to do is you need to go to devices, insert guest edition CD image. Again, this is optional, so if this fails and doesn't work, don't worry too much about it. But if you can get it working, then it is definitely a useful thing to do. So it'll just install a bunch of modules, and then it'll ask you to restart again. Alright, so that's it. Didn't take too long, and once again, I'm going to have to restart the system. Luckily, Ubuntu does boot up pretty fast on here. There we go. Okay, so now I should be able to copy and paste from my main machine to the virtual machine. So let's just test to see if drag and drop is going to work for me, because that would make things a lot easier here. Probably not. Let's try drag this in here. And it didn't work. Okay, of course it didn't. Right, so I'm going to have to get the download links for this stuff then. Okay, so what I'm going to use is I'm just going to use Google, or just Beam it to transfer it to my virtual machine. So generate link, then I can just copy the link from here, open up Firefox in the virtual machine, paste in the link, and download the file. So you want to save file, and it should appear in the downloads. Okay, and from there you can just drag that to your desktop on the virtual machine. Alright, so from this point, let's see if I can full screen this. Alright, so now that we're onto the virtual machine, what we need to do is rename this to just SDK or something shorter. And now we need to get everything set up so that we can use this. So first things first, go ahead and open up the terminal. So just click here, type in TER, come up with terminal. I'm going to open that up. And then you want to go ahead and type in sudo apt-get update. So that will just go ahead and install the updates or any additional updates for Ubuntu. You want to do that just to avoid errors and other problems. So once you've got that, we can now start installing the stuff we need to get the SDK working. So first thing is we need to install something called LLVM. So to do that, you type in sudo space apt-get install, and then LLVM, just like that, and then just say yes, so Y, and press enter to continue, and let this install. And then once we've installed that, we need to basically do the same command, but we need to install something called bin utils. Okay, so that's done. Now we need to install bin utils. So if you just hit up on the arrow key on your keyboard until you get the previous command entered, and then just change LLVM to bin utils, press enter, and that will install that. There we go, done. Okay, so now that that's installed, we need to now redirect the PS4 SDK. So we need to redirect the path inside, or we need to add a path inside environment to basically redirect to this SDK location. So to do that, you can either use gedit or nano or something like that. Okay, so I'm just going to use nano. So type in sudo nano space and then the location, which will be etc/environment. And then that should open up this. Now you'll see you've got a path in here. Now you can pretty much ignore that path because what we need to do is add a second path underneath called PS4 SDK in uppercase equals, and then in quotations, just like the top path. But in this path, we're going to put the path to this SDK folder. So this folder right here. Now, is there a way to just copy path? Probably is, but I'm not too familiar with Ubuntu. So if we click on computer, we'll see that the home directory is where our account is located. So home, and then your username, and then desktop, and then SDK. So that is where the SDK is located. So in my case, so that is /home/desktop/SDK. There we go. So yours will probably be the same, but you'll have a different name for your account folder. And then you're going to go ahead and hold Control and press X, and then press Y to save, and then press Enter. And then that should save it. Just to be sure, you can always press the up key, Enter, make sure that that second path is in there, which it is, and then just Control X to exit. Alright, so we know that that has successfully worked. So all we have to do now is basically reboot the system. So shut down, restart again, our third restart. Or is it fourth restart? No, I think it's third restart. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're pretty much done. There's just two other things we need to do. So inside libusbfatfs, you want to go into that folder, right click, open in terminal, and then you want to type in make. So just type in make and press enter, and it should create this little kind of like package type file in here. So if that worked, then great. Then go back to the SDK folder, go into libps4 and do exactly the same thing. So right click in this folder, click open in terminal, and type in make. And as you can see, I got an error there because it didn't complete. So if this happens, there's one of two reasons why this will happen. One, and if the same thing happened with this one as well, one of the reasons could be you're not using the right version of the SDK. So make sure you're using the version that I provided in the description. Do not use any other version. Okay, so, and if you are using the one I put in the description and you're getting the same error I am, then what you basically need to do, if I try that same command again, you'll see it says assembler message, fatal error, at system call S7. So system call.s line 7 is where the issue is. So what you want to do is just go into the source folder, go into that system call.s folder, and then down here you should have this. There's this message that says if your assembler complains about the following uncommented line, which ours is, then it says change it to this line. So basically it's complaining about this line, so all we have to do is comment out that line and uncomment out this line. And then go ahead and Control S or click the save button to save it. And now once you've done that, you should be able to go ahead, open in terminal, type in make, and it should work this time. There we go. I created the little package file in there. Alright, so that is it. We literally do have the PS4 SDK fully set up now. That is pretty much everything you have to do. Just to test to make sure that you can build .bin payloads now. If you go into this examples folder, this folder contains example payloads that you can create and, you know, test to make sure that they're working. Yeah, so here's a really basic payload. So I can right click, go ahead and open in terminal, and then to build the payload you just type in make, and then boom, you've got the .bin payload that you can inject using, you know, Netcat or Netcat GUI or SOCAT or you know, PS4 AIO payload injector. You can inject this bin file. Let's look at another example. We've got this USB one. It's got a bit more stuff in here, so let's generate a payload here. So we just type in make, and boom, we get the .bin payload to inject. So typically, if you get a bunch of files from a developer who says like, oh, here's the source for the payload that you need to inject, and you need to change, you know, whatever, they'll probably tell you what line you need to change to your ID or to a certain thing. Normally, they want you to change something inside, you know, the main source of the payload, which is right here. So they'll probably tell you to, you know, change something in here, maybe your IP or something, IP port, something like that. And then you just have to do that, and then of course open in terminal, type in make, generates the built payload, and then you can just transfer this payload over to your main computer and inject it. Or you could technically even inject it from Ubuntu itself on the virtual machine. Although, quick note on that, if you are wanting to do that, because Netcat is actually a function originally in Linux, so the netcat.exe that you see in Windows is actually just like a sort of copied version of Netcat for Linux, but you know, like a Windows port of it essentially. So if you want to just use something on here, so if you want to inject the payload directly from the virtual machine, there's a slight issue, which is going to be that if you type in ifconfig, which is Linux's version of ipconfig, it'll give you the local IP address of your computer. And as you can see, it's not on the same network. So if I open command prompt on my Windows machine, do ipconfig, you can see that my IP address is a class C address. It's 192.168, whereas on here this is a class A address, so it's 10.0.2.15. So you probably won't be able to send a payload from your virtual machine to your PS4, because your PS4 will be on, you know, your normal network, so it'll have a regular IP like 192.168. something, and this won't be able to, you know, communicate with it. So what you can do is, there's a way to sort this. You'll just have to shut down the system right now, and then inside VirtualBox, if you go into settings and go into network, change the network adapter to bridged adapter, and then click OK, and then go ahead and start. So once you do that, what that should do is the virtual machine should now show up as if it's running on your local area network. So your normal machines, your physical computers on your network, should be able to communicate now with your virtual machine, and that means your virtual machine can now send payloads to your PS4 directly without having to transfer them. So you can literally now build a payload with the SDK in Ubuntu right here, and then you can go ahead and just send it using Netcat inside terminal, which is pretty cool. So in fact, I might be able to actually show you that. Okay, so let's just see. So first of all, if I go into terminal, boop, we can go into terminal here and we can type in ifconfig, and as you can see, my IP address is now a 192.168 address, just like my computer. So my computer can, my network, the other devices on my network can now see and communicate with the virtual machine. So like I should be able to ping my virtual machine now, .108, and there it gets a reply from the virtual machine. So it sees the virtual machine on the network now. So we should be able to send payloads directly from our virtual machine to our PS4. So now we should be able to build a payload on the virtual machine and send it directly to the console from the virtual machine. So that kind of cuts out the middleman, especially if you're developing something and you want to be able to just, you know, test it immediately after you've built it. So yeah, let's go ahead and test this. Hopefully, I don't think these payloads will actually do anything though. That's the only problem. I mean, hopefully they're actually, you know, not fake payloads that'll break my system. Hopefully that's not going to happen. But yeah, I'm not sure. They probably won't do anything, but let's just see. So I'm on the playground. I'm going to load the code execution, waiting for payload. And what we're going to do is we're going to build this example payload right here. So we're just going to make, that makes the payload. And then we can send it immediately afterwards by using Netcat. So we type in nc space -w 3 and then the IP address of our PS4, and then the port number, which was 9023 I believe, for .bin payloads, and then the sort of less than symbol, and then the name of the payload. So we're going to do that. But let's see. So I've got a normal IP now. I switched to wireless on my PS4, so now I'm directly connecting to the router. So let's just see if it works now. We'll do the same thing, but this time my IP is 1.90. Yep, there we go. That executed. That executed right there. Let me try again just to show you. Not sure if I can execute two at once. No, not enough free system memory. God damn it. Okay, well, that was just to prove that it works. But yeah, that definitely works. The reason it didn't do the first IP is because it didn't recognize it being a connection sharing type IP that has 137. But yeah, providing the PS4 is directly connected to the network, you can send the payloads directly with Netcat after you've built them, which is really handy for, you know, just testing things quickly. And then if something doesn't work, then you can, you know, modify your payload and then rebuild it and resend it using Netcat. So that is how you fully set up the PS4 SDK to build your payloads. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. The main reason I did this video, again, is because the next video I'm going to show you is how to decrypt and dump your disk games so that you can either upload them or send them to someone or just run them as a backup. And that involves building a payload like we've done here and changing something in the source code and then building the payload. So that's part of the reason why I did this video, because I wouldn't be able to fit this whole build, creating the SDK and getting that set up in that video as well as all the other stuff that needs to be covered in that video. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for that next video. If you liked the video or found the information useful, go ahead and leave a like, and please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I really do appreciate that, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one.